point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 658th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and Nancy Wolf. Unfortunately, Nancy is not feeling well today, so she isn't here, but I'll just go ahead and do the show anyway, which is not the most fun way of doing things. It's always better when Nancy's here. Okay. This show is a compilation of news and it's what's called news aggregation on energy and climate change. I do this every day. I spend about the first 5 hours of every day putting together a list of articles that I have found in the news from the previous 24 hours and post those to my blog, geoharvey.com. Each individual item has a title, a synopsis, a link to the original site, and about half of them have photographs. The number of these that I do ranges from about 10 to about 15. Almost never more than 15. The site is geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. If you can scroll your screen and you are able to scroll around and find it, you might find a link to tinyurl.com and it will be Energy Week 658 there. And if you click there, you'll get just the news items that are on the show, links to them, photographs, and so forth. If you go to geoharvey.com, and you want to read an item, you'll have to click on the date first, and then choose from the 15 or so pieces that come up, choose the item. Now, this show is being recorded. Actually, it's being recorded on the 16th of January because there was a meeting going on the 15th, and I couldn't use the studio. But the show is covering the time from the 8th of January to the 14th of January. And that said, I think I'm just going to go ahead and put up a picture of a pump jack. This pump jack is not really part of the story, but it's just a representative pump jack. This is from ABC News, and the title of the article is Trump says he spoke to oil companies before Venezuela attack, but didn't brief lawmakers. Trump spoke to U.S. oil companies prior to the attack on Venezuela, though he said he opted to forego disclosure to members of Congress ahead of time due to concerns about possible leaks. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro was taken during that attack. I have a feeling that there's a lot wrong about this. The attack on Venezuela was, I think, without question, an act of war. There was no declared war. It was just an act of war. And it comes along after a series of other attacks that were also acts of war in which the United States has done things like bomb boats, kill civilians who survived the bombing, by the way. This brings to mind the fact that Karl Dönitz, at the end of when the Second World War ended, Karl Dönitz, who had been the head of the submarine service and then the head of the German Navy, and then finally, when Hitler died, he was the German Führer, and he was the person who signed the surrender papers. He was tried at the Nuremberg trials, and he was expected at the Nuremberg trials that he would be sentenced, excuse me, to death, because the German submarines very often, almost always, did not get survivors of ship sinkings out of the water to rescue them. International law says that that's what you do. If you sink a ship, even in a war, you have to get the survivors out of the water. The thing that saved Karl Dönitz was that his defense showed that the Allies did the same thing. They would sink a German submarine and then chug off and leave the survivors in lifeboats out in the middle of the ocean in November, where they were going to freeze to death almost without question, without any effort to pick them up. And that's what saved him. But the point here is that he expected to be executed because he did what Americans did in the Gulf, bombing people who were unarmed and had survived a bombing by a drone. There's a lot more that's wrong here, but this is something. The fact that Donald Trump would tell the oil companies that he was going to do this, but not the Congress, is itself kind of an outrage. Okay, I'm going to go on. I've said too much on that already. The next picture, this is a nice picture. This is a picture, well, I'll explain the picture. This is from Clean Technica, and this is a mesoporous, optically clear heat insulator, which is what is called a MOCHI, or MOCHI, M-O-C-H-I. MOCHI blocks 90% of heat transfer in windows. We're talking about windows in your house, not windows on a computer. Windows do let sunshine in, but they also transmit heat in both directions. About 40% of all energy use is for heating and cooling buildings. Researchers at the University of Colorado Boulder say they have invented a coating that lets 99% of the light through while it reduces heat transfer by 90%. Now, important here is that, well, first of all, if you look at that, it looks like he's looking through a mist, and that's basically what he's doing. That glass that he's looking through has got bubbles in it, tiny bubbles that scatter the light a little bit. It makes it look like it looks like he's in a fog. However, the bubbles are letting the light through. They're letting the image through in a way that is visible, not as well as letting the amount of light through. So if you've got sunshine coming through, you're going to get the amount of sunshine almost 100%. It'll be 99%. Your image is not as visible. When you look out, you'd see everything, but you'd see it, as though it were in a slight mist. But the important thing is 90% of the heat doesn't go through. It's reflected. And that means that if it's winter, then 90% of the heat that hits that glass is reflected. Where is it coming from? It's coming from your house. So it's reflected back into the house. And that means the heat is not being transferred from inside out. That's good. It makes it possible to keep your house warm. During the summer, the heat is coming in from outside and it's being blocked. It's being reflected back. So this will reduce the amount of air conditioning you're going to have to do. It's a big step. And I think if this can be made commercially, it's going to become important. Okay. The next thing that we have is a picture of this is a picture of a recyclable blade. This is from Renews. Ming Yang unveils recyclable 110-meter blade. Ming Yang Smart Energy has rolled out the MYSE23X, and you don't have to say that every time, you just call it the blade. But they rolled out the blade, which is described as the world's first fully recyclable is hard to say, carbon fiber wind turbine blade. The blade exceeds 110 meters in length and optimizes degradation conditions while expanding and the recyclable material system, according to Ming Yang. Just to give you an idea here, you can see a banner that goes most of the way across the picture there, about a third of the way up from the bottom. And it looks like there's little things right above it. Those things, I believe, are people's heads. People are holding that banner. There's a man at the edge of the screen on the right and another man at the edge of the screen on the left. That gray thing behind those people in that banner is the blade. And this thing is huge. Okay, we're up to Friday, January 9th, and we have a picture. This is a picture that I really don't understand very well. And for reasons I'll explain. This article is from Clean Technica. The title of the article is, "They Really Are Shooting Data Centers Up into Space Where Solar Power is Free." That's the title. The temptation of limitless solar power, ambient cooling, and freedom from the aches and pains of terrestrial development has prompted a mad scramble for a piece of the space data center action. The latest to join the fray is Singapore-based Orbit AI. That thing in the picture is apparently the thing that goes into orbit. I cannot for the life of me explain how that compares to the sizes of artificial intelligence or data centers that are on Earth. I mean, those things on Earth are gigantic. And that thing on the screen looks like it's a few feet across and a few feet long. So I don't know. But the important point here is companies are starting to put up satellites that will hold data centers. And those data centers are going to be in areas where they can put out solar arrays to power them. And the solar arrays will power them 24/7 if they just have to get them into the correct orbit. And they will have electricity all the time, and it doesn't have to be supplied from anything on Earth. Okay, I'm going to go to the next picture. I'm sorry, I'm not switching this very well. This is a picture of energy storage, And it is an article from ESS News. I don't know anything about ESS News. I should have taken a note on it. But the title for this is China connects the world's first gigawatt-hour scale energy storage project using supercapacitors. Okay, China's largest supercapacitor-based hybrid energy storage system has been successfully connected to the grid in northwest China. This marks a milestone for hybrid lithium-based energy storage system and supercapacitor. Okay, a supercapacitor is a special kind of storage. Capacitors generally discharge very fast. It's like the spark that you get when you walk across the correct kind of carpet and you touch something. The capacitor discharges at that kind of rate. It just fully discharges. Supercapacitors are structurally different from regular capacitors, and they discharge much more slowly, but they have other characteristics that are important for energy storage. This thing combines lithium-based batteries with supercapacitor for a gigawatt-hour scale storage system. And that is, well, I guess that's all I've got to say about that. I wish I could explain it more, but I don't think I can in any short amount of time. All right, the next picture we've got is a picture of a plug-in installation system being put up by a young lady whose hair is gray, but she's young anyway. She's younger than I am, I can tell you that. This is from Clean Technica, and the title is UL Solution, Underwriters Labs Solutions, debuts testing and certification framework for safer plug-in solar in the U.S. UL Solutions announced that it has launched a plug-in solar system testing and certification program, establishing a clear, dedicated testing framework that will help provide a pathway for safer adaptation of this energy generation technology. Okay. Plug-in solar, what she's putting up there is a solar panel. Plug-in solar is small solar. It's typically a kilowatt or less. It's plugged in to a wall plug socket outlet, and the wall outlet is working on the home energy system to put the energy into the grid. This is working in Germany. There are about a gigawatt of these things put up, which is just, a million systems of a kilowatt. There are things about this that I don't like. And I mentioned them last week, I believe. One of them is that you've got a plug which is putting electricity into the house circuit. And there's a microinverter on this that prevents the plug from putting out any electricity at all unless it senses a circuit there. So you're not going to have a plug that will shock you unless you're plugged into the wall. But there are things about this I don't like, and one of them is that you've got a circuit breaker, you've got a solar panel. They're both potentially putting electricity into the same circuit. If the circuit breaker is, let's just say a 20 watt a circuit breaker, and the solar panel has a certain amount of wattage, you could conceivably have something on that circuit that would take more electricity, that would require more electricity than the circuit breaker can deliver, because it can take the excess from the panel. But the problem is that means that the circuit could have more power on it than it's designed to have, because, you know, that's a 20 watt circuit breaker supports a circuit that you would expect would never need more than 20 watts. 20 watts, 20. Okay, the 20 watts isn't. I'm zoning out on this. So the 20 watts is not correct, but the watts is not the unit. The problem here is that you could overload a circuit. So what they want to do is they want to have this solar panel plugged into a circuit that will not have anything else on it. It's a dedicated circuit. And the thing that I don't like is that it's a regular plug. So it could go into any circuit. And that means that it could. I think the issue here is that I think that this is something that should be thought about more carefully than has been. There's 1 million of them installed in Germany. I'm sure somebody has thought about them carefully, but nevertheless, it bothers me a little bit. We're up to Saturday, January 10th, and we have a picture of wind turbines. This is from MSN. The title is How Clean Energy Could Save Us Trillions of Dollars, that's trillions with a T, by replacing fossil fuels with cheaper renewables and smarter grids. The global economy can avoid trillions of dollars in costs. Now, here comes the issue. The core paradox is that by investing more today, the world can turn the energy transition into one of the most lucrative cost-saving opportunities in modern history. Well, one of the, I think, without question, it would be the, not one of, that's my thinking. Saving trillions of dollars, what can you name that has ever saved trillions of dollars before? I think this puts me in mind of being at a get-together and saying something about, years ago, saying something about carbon footprints. And a fellow who was some sort of entrepreneur, some sort of businessman, said, "What, you believe in climate change?" And the answer to this was, look, if you don't believe in climate change, then you're gonna avoid getting into the biggest business opportunity in history. And is that something you want to do, or are you willing to find out what's actually going on? And I think that's a real approach to this. Okay, I'm going to go on. This is a picture of an iron air battery. Iron air batteries are something that I have been interested in for quite a while. Forum Energy is in Somerville, Massachusetts. It also has a factory in West Virginia. This is from Clean Technica. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I wrote the article. What can I say? I'm guilty of this article. The title of the article is The Mystery of the Massachusetts Battery Tendered. The first big energy storage tender in Massachusetts was based on a state law that doesn't specify how much energy is to be stored. What it specifies is the ranges of how long batteries can deliver at full power. But what batteries can be used? lithium batteries can't deliver for some of the times specified. Now, what had happened was, a few days earlier, there was an article, in Clean Technica that was written by the head editor of Clean Technica, who said, this is the first big battery tender in Massachusetts, but I don't understand what is going on with a tender. The battery tender consisted of component parts, 3.5 gigawatts, which is a lot of energy, was going to be stored in batteries that would deliver at peak capacity for 4 hours. When you hear that a lithium-ion battery will deliver 4 hours, the energy stored is 4 hours worth of energy. What they mean is that the lithium-ion battery, if it is asked to discharge at full capacity, will do so for 4 hours. Now, if it's asked to discharge at half that capacity, it'll discharge for 8. If it's asked to discharge at 5 watts and it's got 5 gigawatts, it'll discharge for 1 billion hours. Don't get too fixed on a battery that is labeled a 4-hour battery being only able to store power for 4 hours, and then you won't get anything, because that's not how it works. What I did was I looked at this and I saw 3,500 megawatts at 4 hours. Then there was 750 megawatts that were to be stored at 3,500 at 4 to 10 hours. Then 750 megawatts for 10 to 24 hours, and 750 megawatts for at least 24 hours. And this is a specification that is bizarre. But what it implies is that 3,500 megawatts of the amount specified here could be lithium-ion or lithium ferrophosphate batteries, the kinds of batteries that are normally used for grid storage today. The other 1,500 megawatts would not come from those batteries. Maybe 750 of them could, but probably not, because the reason you can't get a 10-hour battery that's lithium ion is because you'll have to get too much. A 10-hour battery that is lithium ion would be 2.5 times a 4-hour battery. So it's going to be 2.5 times as big. And the question is that going to be economically feasible? And when you get to 24-hour batteries, it's not a question anymore. Lithium-ion batteries won't do that. So I had been interested in iron-air batteries. The battery that is in the picture is, as I recall, a 10 megawatt, 100-hour battery. The thing about iron-air batteries is that they're very cheap, but they're very big. And the result of this is that you can store huge amounts of electricity for very long periods of discharge at full value, 100 hours in this case. That's a 10 megawatt, 1 gigawatt hour battery. And the bottom line on this is batteries are changing fast. And we're getting into a point where we can store huge amounts of power for very, very long times and very cheaply. So things are changing. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next item here. This is an offshore wind farm. This item comes from Renews. Equinor warns Empire Wind faces cancellation if restart is delayed. Equinor told a U.S. federal district court that if critical construction activities at its 810 megawatt Empire Wind 1 do not resume by 16 January, quote, which by the way is today, but this appeared in the news on the 10th. Cascading effects will likely result in the project's cancellation. That's a big cancellation. Installation of the offshore substation is on a particularly tight schedule. They have to have a ship that is capable, that has cranes on it that are capable of lifting like 1,000 tons, 2,000 tons in a particular way. Or 5,000 tons. It's a big ship. There aren't that many of them. It's got a schedule it's got to follow. And so this thing has to be done on schedule or it just isn't going to work. Well, it happens that Empire Wind has resumed construction because the court found that they would allow it to go ahead while the judge, and as I recall, this judge was appointed by Donald Trump, while the judge considers the case of shutting it down. Okay, we're up to Sunday, January 11th, and we have a picture here of a German solar park, and the article comes from oilprice.com. The title is What the Market Gets Wrong About Renewables. And I have to tell you, I regretted today, as I was just doing the last little bit of preparation for the show, I regretted putting this photograph in because I've got a better representation. The synopsis for this says, according to a German study, the next target or victim of renewables could be baseload power generation itself. The study is set to answer a single question: could the German economy carbonize in 20 years relying on just incremental investments in renewables? And the answer is definite yes. Now, I've got a note here that says, and this is this is a quote from the article. Constructing a decarbonized grid like the one envisioned literally destroys the economics for all baseload power plants. That means coal, natural gas, nuclear. They all will have their economic systems destroyed. And the reason is because with batteries, such as the one that we were just looking at, where power can be stored within a few years, probably. The first of these batteries are coming online. Power can be stored for about a half a cent per kilowatt hour. Revision Energy is looking at, Next Era Energy, which is the biggest utility in the United States. Next Era Energy is looking at the wholesale price of solar power with battery backup at under 2 cents per kilowatt hour. The wholesale price of wind power with battery backup is even lower. And this is compared to 3.5 cents as the minimum for baseload power from paid down plants. The prices I'm giving for solar and wind are for new plants. This is a big threat to any kind of plant that is, if Donald Trump wants to keep coal burning plants open, he can put the money into it, but the taxpayer is going to pay. And the taxpayer is going to pay a lot more. We're going to be paying extra because Donald Trump doesn't like solar and wind. It's what it is. Okay, Next item. This is a refinery in Volgograd. This is from ABC News, and the title says Ukrainian drones set fire to Russian oil depot after Moscow launches new missile. A Ukrainian drone strike sparked a fire in an oil depot in Russia's southern Volgograd region. Regional authorities said Ukraine's long-range drone strikes on Russian energy sites aim to deprive Moscow of the oil export revenue it needs to pursue its full-scale invasion. Oil can be used as in this case, not a weapon, but a target. And when you hit an oil plant and destroy part of it, you're destroying an ability of the person or the country that owns that plant to wage war. So that's what's happening. The Ukrainians are waging this war by destroying the ability of Russia to wage war. Okay, I'm going to go on. We have a picture of an offshore substation, and this is from Renews. The title is Irish Regulator Publishes Offshore Wind Lease Rules. The Maritime Area Regulatory Authority, the Irish Marine Regulator, published its competitive framework for offshore wind leasing. The framework is intended to complement Ireland's approach to offshore renewable energy development and to support national climate and energy targets. I think it's really kind of unnecessary to go beyond that. This is just progress is being made in Ireland. And so it's working. We're up to Monday, January 12th, and we have a picture of a solar array. Those are, what are they in the background? Olive trees? I think they're olive trees in the background. The title of this article, this is from GEO News, GEO News. Pakistan sets ambitious 60% renewable energy target by 2030. It's getting close. Pakistan set a target for 60% renewable energy in its power mix by 2030 as the country continues its rapid transition to cleaner energy sources. Pakistan's coordinator on climate change, Romina Khurshid Alam, announced the goal at the 16th IRENA Assembly in Abu Dhabi. Again, this is something that basically I think doesn't require any more comment than that. It is just one example. I could have used a lot of examples, but this is just one example of a country aiming at much higher percentage of renewable energy. By the way, this does mean that the future of fossil fuels is that fossil fuels will almost certainly decline. Okay, the next item is from, this is wind turbines. This is from Egypt Oil and Gas. Egypt seals $1.8 billion renewable energy deals with China and Norway. Egypt sealed agreements worth over $1.8 billion with Norway's Scatec and China's Sungrow to develop two major renewable energy projects, marking a major transition in the nation's green energy infrastructure, according to a statement by the cabinet. Now, I think this is, again, it's just another example of countries that are getting involved in bigger transitions. 10 years ago, this would have been interesting as an article of, well, I think 18 million would have been interesting 10 years ago. This is 100 times that size. The sizes of renewable energy projects are getting to be huge by comparison. And this one is $1.8 billion. It's not a remarkably big size today. Okay. The next item here is from Clean Technica. And what you're seeing there is a perovskite silicon solar cell. The title of the article is "No Wonder Oil Execs Are Skittish. They Know Perovskite Solar Cells Are Coming." The combination of perovskites and silicon produces a low-cost solar cell with the highest efficiency. With that, a fresh wave of perovskite solar cell innovation is adding even more reason to wonder whether the United States will ever sell the oil it's taking from Venezuela. Now, perovskites, I think they're named for a man named Perovsky. It was Perovsk something I think he was Perovsky. He discovered these minerals, perovskite minerals, which are crystals of, I'm trying to think of what that is. I think they're calcium, titanium, and oxygen. I might be wrong, but they are natural crystals. And he discovered them, I'm going to say 180 years ago. Nobody had a lot of use for them, but in the not very distant past, it was found that they could be used. The artificial man-made version of this could be used to make solar cells. They offered a very cheap solar cell, which was also very powerful, very efficient. The problem was that they didn't last. And by that I mean in a few weeks, they would lose all their power because they would decay in an open situation. Various people have spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to vitrify them, which means put them in glass so that they aren't exposed directly to the atmosphere. And in this particular case, the people who are working on this, have combined them with silicon cells to produce a very powerful, very relatively cheap solar cell. So we'll see how that goes. All right, we're up to Tuesday, January 13th, and we have a picture of a nuclear power plant. This particular power plant is the Pickering power plant, which is not in the United States, it's in Canada. Ontario, this is from news.iask.ca, which is a Canadian URL. Ontario Power Generation seeks near double rate increase for electricity from nuclear plants. Ontario Power Generation is seeking a near doubling of payments it receives for electricity produced by its nuclear power plants, a request that could lead to surging power bills. The rate application was submitted to the Ontario Energy Board in December. Now, I looked at the article, and maybe I missed this, but I don't understand this rate hike. And the reason I don't understand it is because I don't understand whether they're talking about just raising the portion of the electricity that comes from the cost of the portion of the electricity that comes from nuclear plants, or whether they're talking about doubling people's power bills. There could be a big difference. I mean, if much of the electricity in Ontario comes from nuclear plants. But if you get 50% of your power from nuclear and the rest from something else, and you just double the nuclear plant percentage of the cost, then you've raised the cost of electricity to the ratepayer by 50%. And I don't know exactly how that works. It does tell us, though, Ontario Power is planning on charging a lot more for electricity from these nuclear power plants. And this doesn't surprise me all that much. Nuclear power is expensive. People who say that it's cheap don't understand. If you disagree with me, you're doing something that's in your right. But if you're going to bring a disagreement to me, please show me the numbers. I can show you the material that came from NextEra Energy, wind and solar. They're talking about near firm, meaning that there's a lot of battery behind it, and people could expect to be using wind and solar 100% of the time. I should say through 100% of the day and night, almost every day. And it's very cheap. It's less than 2 cents per kilowatt hour wholesale, compared to 3.5 cents for completely paid down natural gas. Same price or a little higher for completely paid down nuclear. New nuclear, you're talking about 10.5 cents compared to 2 cents and less. I just don't see how you can claim that nuclear power is inexpensive, but politicians do. And I don't have a lot of time for going into that much further. However, we have a picture here of a wind turbine under construction. The article is from Renews. Ørsted Skyborn attempt to restart Revolution build. We were talking about Revolution being stopped by the Trump administration. Ørsted and Skyborn will restart construction of the 704 megawatt Revolution wind project off the new U.S. northeast coast as soon as possible after a judge granted the partners an injunction against U.S. Bureau of Ocean Energy Management stop work order, BOEM. Maybe I've got that. Ocean Energy Management, I think it is. But nevertheless, it is BOEM. Stop work order. Revolution Wind has already installed all of its foundations and 58 of its 65 turbines. There are other. I think Vineyard Wind has all but one of its turbines installed, and it has not been given a go-ahead. But, there it is. Okay, we have a picture of Letitia James here. This article is from Renews, and the title is New York Sues Over Empire and Sunrise Shutdowns. New York is the third state to sue the Trump administration over its blanket shutdown of offshore wind projects under construction. New York Attorney General Letitia James filed a pair of lawsuits challenging the move to halt Equinor's 810 megawatt Empire Wind 1 and Ørsted's 924 megawatt Sunrise Wind. The reason why the administration shut these wind projects down was ostensibly because of concerns over security. And the one worry about security that I am aware of that came up in the past was a worry that there could be things flying around in these wind farms that would be invisible to radar because the wind turbines are constantly in motion. Now, I know I have seen the published results of tracking birds flying through wind farms in the UK. And they have radar today that is good enough that you can actually track a seagull, an individual seagull flying through a wind farm, offshore wind farm. And honestly, I don't believe the administration is doing this for justifiable reasons. I think they're doing it because Donald Trump doesn't like offshore wind, which may be because he failed to stop the offshore wind project at St. Andrews in Scotland that he wanted to stop because it would be detrimental to his investment in a golf facility. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go to, we're at Wednesday, January 14th, and we have a picture of clouds, which is representative of a hot year, I guess. This is from Euronews. The title is Copernicus, 2025 was the third hottest year with two main drivers. Global warming is increasingly evident. 2025 was the third hottest year on record globally and in Europe, and the last 3 years were the hottest ever recorded globally. Now the last 11 years have been the hottest 11 years ever recorded. The two main drivers for heat were greenhouse gases and high sea surface temperatures. Both of those are worrisome. I'm going to go on from that. We have a picture of cargo ships, and this is in China. This is from ABC News. The title is China's trade surplus surges 20% to a record $1.2 trillion, even with Trump's tariffs. China's trade surplus hit a record of almost 1.2 trillion in 2025. This is the surplus. They are bringing $1.2 trillion worth of funds into China by selling things, according to the government, as exports to other countries made up for the slowing shipments to the United States despite high tariffs. Chinese cars, computer chips, and other products grew across the globe. Now, I don't know. China is by far the largest producer of solar cells, solar panels. I think China is the biggest national seller of wind turbines. The biggest individual seller of wind turbines is Vestas, I believe, still, but there's multiple companies doing that in China. China is the biggest seller of electric vehicles. The biggest individual seller of electric vehicles is China. China makes a huge portion of electric buses, electric locomotives. Certainly, they make more than 50% of ships. China is big and growing, and the fact that we are avoiding those markets, I think, is not good for the United States or the future of the United States. Here we see evidence that Trump is losing the trade war, and the American people are losing it with him. Okay, we have our last item, which is, here we have a picture of construction of an offshore wind turbine. This is from Renews. Ørsted's boss is satisfied to get back to work at Revolution Wind. Ørsted CEO Rasmus Erbo is satisfied with a court ruling satisfied in quotes, blocking enforcement of Donald Trump's shutdown order for the 704 megawatt Revolution Wind and allowing work to resume on the project. The Ørsted boss said the company had been prepared for the shutdown. Now, I want to tell you about an item that we will deal with, and I think it may be the first item scheduled for next week, because this is something that I think is very exciting. There was an article that appeared. I don't remember what the publication was. It was not one of the publications that we often cite, Clean Technica, Renews, and so forth. It said that a young woman, oh yes, I do remember, it was Euronews. A young woman in the United States, and by young I mean certainly, well, probably younger than my daughter. Not as young as my granddaughter. Let's put it in there. She looked like she might be, I don't know. I'm no longer any good at judging women's ages. But she has a doctorate, and she was given an award for work that she did that shows that mushrooms, fungi, I should say, growing in the ground, draw down 13 billion tons of carbon dioxide every year. And that is stunning. That means that a third of the amount of greenhouse gases, I should say carbon dioxide, a third of the amount of carbon dioxide that we release into the atmosphere for burning fossil fuels is drawn down every year by mushrooms. Do you suppose we could make that better? Well, one thing that we can do to make it worse is cutting down forests, because these mushrooms live symbiotically with trees. And if the trees are gone, the mushrooms are going to go with them. On the other hand, if we plant things that those mushrooms will grow with, which I don't think, they certainly don't all need trees, we could get them back and grow and draw down more carbon dioxide. Anyway, that is that. The wish that I have for you is that you have an exquisitely beautiful week. I will wave goodbye. Nancy would wave goodbye, but of course she's not here. However, I can say I'm waving goodbye for Nancy. She would do it. And I hope you enjoyed the show and that you come back next week and see what we have to say then.